I'm Shane Bigham. The Chinese foreign minister says the country's development conforms to the common interests of all countries in the region and should not be blocked. Wang Yi was responding to questions about China-U.S. relations following the province with the foreign ministers of Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and South Korea, as China's urging the United States to respect China's development. Wang says that in facing the challenges of globalization era, China and the U.S. should have more dialogue and cooperation in this region. He also says China welcomes dialogue on the basis of equality. 3-day tune sweep. Listening to China, 18 million passenger trips, setting a single-day record for this year. Figures also show that airlines handled nearly 1.5 million passenger trips in China on Saturday, a jump of around 370% compared to the first day of the holiday last year. Tune Sweeping Day, also known as Qingming Festival, was yesterday, Sunday the 4th. More than 40 people are dead and 9 others injured as flash floods and landslides hit East Nusa Tenggara province in southern Indonesia. Officials say the disasters buried dozens of houses, swept away several other houses, and destroyed a bridge. Hundreds of people are still missing in the area around one local village. Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says Iran will not hold any direct or indirect talks with representatives of the United States in the meeting of the 2015 nuclear agreement participants scheduled for Tuesday in Vienna. He says Iran will return to full compliance with the agreement after verifying the removal of sanctions. The senior diplomat says Iran will not accept any step-by-step plan to revive the agreement, but only the lifting of all the sanctions imposed by the administration of former U.S. President Donald Trump. The April 6th meeting in Vienna will be convened after a virtual reunion on Friday of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action participants. U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price confirmed on Friday that Washington representatives will attend the Vienna encounter and said the country remains open to direct talks with Iran. France is making efforts to ramp up its COVID-19 vaccination campaign amid surging infections and a need for jabs. Health workers in the city of Sarcelles, north of Paris, spent Easter.
So which one of these?
Dialogue on the basis of equality and mutual respect, adding that China does not accept that one country has the final say in world affairs. Economists say China's role in boosting world economic development is becoming more and more important. It comes after Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with a number of key members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations of this year. According to the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, the company's raked in revenue.
We're getting 2 different reports. Am I getting this to
these 4 countries, especially now, we are still coping in the difficult time with the COVID-19 and also with the instability in Myanmar under the ASEAN centrality. I think China has certain expectations how ASEAN can provide leadership in helping to resolve some of the issues among ASEAN nations.
And after the 3-day visit to China made by the foreign ministers of the 4 ASEAN members, China also received South Korean Foreign Minister Chung Eui-yong on Friday and Saturday. Chen Hong is executive director of the Asia Pacific Studies Center at East China Normal University, and he says such kinds of intensive diplomatic interactions have shown China's playing an increasingly important role as a stabilizing force in regional affairs.
I think that actually shows a kind of dynamism, of Chinese diplomacy. Of course, Foreign Minister Wang also visited 6 countries, including Iran, Turkey, and also the Defense Minister Wei Fenghe also visited 4 countries in Europe. So we see such kind of intensity of Chinese diplomacy. That means actually China is providing a kind of, stabilizing force. In the local stability and also peace and also development, and also is actually an important force to provide a kind of booster of the economic developments, especially against the background of the COVID-19.
Officials say enhancing local and regional collaboration is very important to help overcome COVID-19 in a more effective way, as well as to promote the travel sector. Passenger trips topped over 51 million Saturday, the first day of the nation's 3-day tomb sweeping holiday. The reading jumped over 157% from the same period of last year. The China State Railway Group says Saturday saw approximately 14 million passenger trips, setting a single-day record for this year. Figures also show that airlines handled nearly 1.5 million passenger trips in China on Saturday, a jump of around 370% compared to the first day of the holiday last year. Tomb Sweeping Day, also known as Qingming Festival, was yesterday, Sunday the 4th. Virtual tomb sweeping is gaining in popularity in China this year as people pay their respects to their dearly departed amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
Chinese people traditionally observe the Qingming Festival by visiting the graves of family members who have passed on and sweeping their tombs. The COVID-19 pandemic has inspired many to attend online tomb sweeping services. Wang Wenxiang at a cemetery in Baotou, Inner Mongolia, says they launched a cloud-based tomb sweeping channel to allow people to pay their respects remotely.
We offer 3 options on our official website. They include online worship, a time capsule mailbox, and a digital missing wall. People can choose digital items such as flowers, candles, and incense sticks to bestow blessings.
Using this service, online tomb sweepers can edit the information of their deceased relatives and upload pictures and videos onto the digital platform. Many cemeteries are also providing a panoramic view of the graveyard using VR technology, heightening the virtual tomb sweeping experience. A resident surnamed Song in Shaoxing, Zhejiang Province, says virtual tomb sweeping is especially convenient for people living far from home.
I've chosen such services for my late grandparents. I saw the virtual service advertised on WeChat and thought this form of tomb sweeping was very good. Because of the impact of the pandemic, we couldn't visit the tombs of our ancestors in person. These services provide us an alternative, and my family and I are very relieved.
Additionally, people can hire cemetery staff to physically sweep the tombs on their behalf and host a live broadcast of the entire ceremony. When visiting graves, many people also follow other Qingming traditions, such as burning paper money and incense sticks. Now they have the option to present their offerings online. Tian Gangjiang, with the Civil Affairs Bureau of Kuqiao District in Shaoxing, suggests that performing virtual tomb sweeping is not just a need created by the current public health crisis.
The number of people taking part in online worship has increased a great deal. This is because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, people are paying more attention to environmental conservation, which will become a major trend going forward.
Many say that virtual tomb sweeping is an entirely satisfying way for them to show how much they miss their dearly departed. For the Beijing Hour, I'm Wenjie.
Coming up, Beijing's capital international airports become a global hub for shipping COVID vaccines.
Dive into the sports world with sideline stories.
Okay, so this will be the other show that doesn't repeat.
China, but that said, having heard earlier.
What are we getting
discussing? I think between the U.S. and China, among the security studies community,
everything on this channel is about the U.S.
a fundamentally different definition of what constitutes stability. Does stability mean
US
that
and China, like, it's going to be one? Don't say those things. You piss a lot of people off.
Scenes around the world. Guoyan has more.
Sinopharm and Sinovac, 2 of China's major COVID-19 vaccine makers, both have their production plants in the Chinese capital, making Beijing Capital International Airport already one of the world's busiest airports, a major vaccine transportation hub. Fu Chunlei from International Cold Chain Transportation at Beijing Aviation Ground Services said the airport has witnessed an increase in vaccine delivery. We started loading vaccines in July last year, and we have registered a visible increase in transportation since January. Up to March the 19th, we loaded over 1,100 tons of vaccines, which were sent to 41 countries and regions by chartered flights. The ground service operator has set up refrigeration storage for vaccines at the airport, which need to be put in specially made cold chain containers for long-distance transportation. Most of the planes that arrive to pick up the vaccines are charter flights. The temporarily modified passenger aircraft require extra attention and labor. The airport has prioritized the flights that come to pick up vaccines to help improve efficiency. Zhao Zheng of Beijing Aviation Ground Services says their teams have been beefing up efforts to ensure safe transportation.
Regarding staff, we have put together a professional maintenance team to fast-track the transportation of vaccines around the world. They are very experienced and they have the certification to handle international flights.
So far, China has exported vaccines to over 40 countries on commercial contracts, while donating jabs to nearly 70 developing countries in need of assistance. China's been ramping up its production capacity to meet the growing demand for vaccines around the world. Analysts from the China Center for Disease Prevention and Control estimate that China's vaccine output capacity will reach 5 billion doses by the end of this year. For the Beijing Hour, this is Guo Yan.
A group of expats in Shanghai who registered early has already received COVID-19 vaccine shots. Young Cheng Shi reports.
Nick Parrish lives in Shanghai. On his personal
I think that definitely it's not a battle between ideology. I think it's a traditional natural rivalry between great powers with ideological dimension. So U.S. as a liberal democracy, while China has been seen as a liberal autocracy, but it's more of a traditional and a natural rivalry.
So Professor
How does that help us
do you agree?
pick stocks?
I agree 100%. I mean, the 21st century is going to be a return to great power rivalry, and the United States and China will be, the two leading great powers. So a lot of the dynamics of their relationship are going to be shaped by the fact that power, in a way, has a certain influence on how states see each other. And I agree with Professor Lucas that, we don't want to turn a natural rivalry into, something more that, becomes an intense security competition or even war. But I do think we shouldn't ignore the fact that there is an ideological component to this rivalry. I mean, we see it in the United States. We're having questions about our own democracy given the events of the last year, and it's hard not to compare, our response, for example, to the COVID crisis to that of the Chinese government, and ask, how our different, political systems responded and things like that. So there is that element to it.
There's always that element to it, Bob, but given the current juncture, if we could just get your point of view.
Gradually, as his field expanded, he hired migrant workers during the plowing and harvest seasons.
In 2013, when I had only 3 hectares of cotton field,
powers in the past have managed to, contain their rivalry, in a stable way.
The Chinese government
what I hope will achieve in terms of U.S.-Chinese relations.
Professor Zhao, why do you think the Biden administration is always highlighting ideology in this competition with China?
I didn't sleep wrong either.
Ideology is sometimes a matter of semantics, and sometimes it's a matter of conceptual guidance for domestic policy. But then those two dimensions are actually not rather benign, but do we really have an ideological competition in terms of influence outside your nation state or outside your jurisdiction?
United Nations.
I think Americans assume that the Chinese pursue that, just like the Soviets did in the Cold War. But here in China, I must admit that some of the rhetoric,
we can't call it the Silk Road. Can we call it the Orient Express? Why can't we call it the Orient Express?
Does give that kind of impression. But as I read between the lines, there is a good deal of rethinking how China projects itself. And that's why you have more reference to a second Cold War or a new Cold War out of the United States rather than out of China.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Okay, but Professor Jia, do you think Biden's strategy is working in terms of seeking alliance? Like, how do you look at the coordinated sanctions from the U.S., the European Union, Canada, and the UK against China over human rights issues in Xinjiang? And by the way, that's also EU's first ever sanctions against China in 30 years. Do you see an anti-China coalition in the making?
It's very hard to understand. You know, I'm a political scientist. Historians are much better at doing this.
Oh, you motherfucker! That is such a cop-out.
Made that decision.
You're a drama teacher too, because so's our prime minister.
By thinking that they were going to do something symbolic and get it both ways, satisfy the Americans and not anger the Chinese. But then, of course, the Chinese response has been what we have seen. And yeah,
get out of my way. Get out of my. By the way, where is one way?
In lining up an alliance, certainly it has. But look, life doesn't end.
You get sick and die. Why won't you tell us?
There is a future. Let's not overreact. That's what I would say.
Okay, Professor Desch, how do you think the European Union or other American allies are positioning themselves in this competition between the U.S. and China? And do they have a choice?
Well, yeah, I think they definitely have a choice, and I think the Europeans and the NATO allies are thinking about this in part, that they have their own agenda with the United States. They'd like us, to re-engage to a greater extent than the previous administration had. In the Biden administration was made clear, that this particular issue with sanctions on China is something that's important to the Biden administration. So I'm sure the European allies are not happy, but willing to throw this loan to the Biden administration. On the other hand, Europe's a long way from Asia. And I'm not sure that they have the same equity in a lot of these issues that we have. And in fact, I think the interesting bellwether for me is not so much Western Europe, but Southeast Asia and how they view the U.S. role in, managing the rise of China. And those are countries that, of course, are much closer to China. And, seeing what their preferences are for this, I think will be far more important because they have a much greater stake in it.
Yes, we'll touch upon the China's relations and Americans' relations with those Southeast Asian countries in a short while. But Professor Lucas, we know that some would say that the transatlantic alliance is withering, especially during the Trump's 4 years. But now do you see a revitalization of that alliance? And what do you think this alliance is based on? What does the U.S. have to offer?
Well, the adults are back in the room is the short answer, because under the Trump administration, you did not have a coherent or predictable American foreign policy or approach to partnerships, and you had a president who simply was hostile towards partners, whether they were in Europe or whether in some cases, whether they were in Asia.
Whether they were dealing
now
cards at his
you
casinos.
are seeing the Biden administration with allies getting back to the rules of the game. And that means establishing, look, we're going to have coordination, we're going to have cooperation, not just on the issues regarding China. We've seen it in recent weeks regarding Russia. We're going to see it regarding the Ukraine question. We're going to see it possibly regarding other areas of the world, such as the Middle East. I think to extend what you just heard a moment ago, however, I'm concerned because quite often people only look at the U.S. part of that question. They don't necessarily look, for example, at the Europeans or the Asian partners. And I have to say with respect that there is a great deal of concern, for example, amongst European countries and amongst some Asian countries about what is happening in Xinjiang province with the Uyghur population, that the reports which are out there, which do make the allegations of these camps and of abuses in the camps, there is an issue of transparency, an issue of what is actually happening there. And I think to simply say that the Europeans are following the American lead, say on Xinjiang, or indeed on an issue such as Hong Kong, is to reduce the Europeans, or risk reducing them, as supposedly just simply being puppets or at least followers of Washington. And you can't do that. In other words, it's not just Washington that is at the heart of this question about both of alliance politics and of relations with China. You have to consider the position of an Australia, the position of an India, or the position of, say, a France or Germany, if you're really going to get to the heart of this.
So Professor Sao, what do you think is making the European countries or some of other American allies to stand with the U.S. again? Is it because they feel there's some problem with what's happening in China, in Xinjiang, or what else?
Wagwan China, that's what I was going to title the video, and then I didn't.
The Europeans have genuine human rights concern over what's happening in Xinjiang.
Listen,
but from American perspective, I think there are two aspects that United States, on the one hand, some of the Americans have genuine concern over human rights abuse, but also I think the United States, people like Pompeo, they use the Xinjiang issue to punish China. Can I say something about what does the U.S. have to offer?
It's very American of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the United States has the following aspects: the experience of World War I and World War II as the so-called the arsenal of democracy and security components of the last resorts. Second, the next year post-World War II political and economic order, the so-called liberal international order, the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, NATO, and support for EU. Third, shared value system regarding rule of law and representative democracy. And fourth, shared white culture, etc. While this has been diminished in these years, historically, these aspects are very strong soft power.
Okay, so Professor Jia Daozhong, I'd like to get your view on this because just now we seem to have agreed that this is actually ideology is not at the center of this competition between the U.S. and China. But what do you think is now making the European Union, the American allies, decide to stand with the U.S., for example, in sanctioning China over the Xinjiang issue?
Well, the issues. The situations that developed in Hong Kong and in Xinjiang and previously Tibet, these are long issues with long history and a complicated narrative. I would think, looking back, that the Chinese government will probably, at least on the foreign policy front, was probably too complacent in many ways. Now, there is a point, complacent in terms of addressing the civil society, let's say, whatever the point paint as fact or whatnot. But then there are disputes about whether those constitute a fact. And frankly for me, as a scholar at a school at Beida here in central China, we were caught off guard by this waves and waves of rhetoric that just came out. And then the real risk we're having here is that the kind of coordinated action by European Union, Canada, the UK, or Australia, Japan, but not. Here in China, you have a view that, oh, wait a minute, this may well be the repetition of what happened even under the UN umbrella, the United Nations, towards Iraq. In other words, we were not really consulted.
Are we going to war or not?
Really,
you're better friends with the Russians than we are.
I mean, no, these sanctions just got put on your lap.
This is going to be so.
There was very little real discussion about, let's say, towards let's compare the notes about those allegations. There was just this somehow one-sided kind of Xinjiang dossier. A dossier is what it was, or the Hong Kong dossier. So it does.
I can barely hear him too. I'm so sorry. I can barely hear this motherfucker.
China. I think there was a point of why so many countries have acted in the way, but at the same time, the modality of interaction on these issues can have a room for rethinking. I think that's if we really want to avoid this being a further escalation of rough feelings at the societal level.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Professor Dash, another latest development is that it is reported that Biden says he suggested to the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson that democratic countries should have an infrastructure plan to rival China's Belt and Road Initiative. What do you make of the prospect of this plan?
I think that's a very interesting question. Personally, I think that China's Belt and Road Initiative is sort of a harbinger of a different form of great power rivalry. And I don't know that in the United States, we fully embraced that. On the one hand, we sort of think about China and the rise of China, through the lens of the Cold War. When our rivalry with the Soviet Union, was primarily military, but also ideological. And there's certainly an important military component of the U.S.-China relationship. But, my instinct is that China is thinking about great power politics in a somewhat different way. It's still a struggle, for relative power. But they're using other instruments, including sort of geoeconomics and the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, I think in the States, the realization that that's how China is playing the game is dawning on us. But I don't think we have a good sense yet of how we ought to respond to it. The knee-jerk reaction is that China is establishing these close relations with all these countries through these infrastructure projects. We've got to respond in kind. And maybe, we do, but I think we ought to think about whether, in fact, even if China thinks that this is a way to gain more influence in the world, whether
you're trying to replace shit that fell apart 50 years ago.
The Belt and Road Initiative is going to turn out, to be a relatively unsuccessful effort to buy influence through nation building, which, of course, the United States has a long and unsuccessful career of trying to do.
Okay, thank you. We have to take a short break here, sorry, but coming back, we'll continue our discussion.
Did you just say to the Chinese that their Belt and Road Initiative is some sort of geopolitical activity, you
Hello, this is
idiot,
Michael
shut
John.
up.
Greetings from Los Angeles of the Golden State of California.
We'll come back
Thank
to
you today
American
for making me
paranoia.
part of your team. I truly enjoyed the debates we had and look
Interference in
forward
other
to many
nations'
more in the
affairs,
years to come.
and that it's rampant in American society. That's well, interesting.
Hello,
How is it red at night, red in the morning, and red at night again? What the fuck's going on with the weather?
It's been an honor taking part on your show and telling you about the relationship between Chile and China. Wishing you all the best.
In-depth analysis, valuable insights, expert views, presented by an award-winning team. Today, keeping you well informed, up to date, and ahead of the news.
Hello everyone, this is Zoon Ahmed Khan, journalist from Pakistan, currently based in Chiang
Two
Mai
of your
University.
friends got killed this
World
year in
Today
Toronto
is
and nobody
an
gives a
excellent
fuck.
initiative to discuss current affairs by including experts from across the globe. I've always enjoyed our thought-provoking discussions and wish the team even more success and impact in the future. I am Dan Wang, China analyst from the Economist Intelligence Unit. Today is a very fun program. It is a place you hear interesting people discuss global events, social trends, and what is happening in China and in the rest of the world. So friends around the world, hope you can join us.
Fuck, I could have got up and made coffee and everything real fast if I had coffee in my system. Somebody has to make all those.
You're listening to World Today. I'm Joey. Joe Biden is building an anti-China alliance. What is China's response? Let's get back to our panel. We are joined by Michael Dush, Professor of International Relations at the University of Notre Dame and Director of the Notre Dame International Security Center. Xia Yafeng, Professor of History at Long Island
very
University.
subtle, but she's pronouncing
Scott
it better
Lucas,
than
Professor of
Notre
International
Dame.
Politics and American Studies at Birmingham University, and Professor Jia Daojun from the School of International Studies at Peking University. So Professor Xia Yafeng, I'd like to get a view on what Professor Dush mentioned about his view on China's Belt and Road Initiative. How do you look at this, and do you think this is about great power rivalry?
Well, first of all, I think that Biden's suggestion sounds frankly very wacky and just momentary, not well considered idea. Biden is committed to a $2 trillion infrastructure plan for the U.S. domestic only. There is no way American tax dollars, let alone U.S. policy attention, will be spent to build roads, railroads, and ports in Mexico, Africa, and Central Asia. And no one I have heard of has advocated a global infrastructure plan in America. So money is just not around for that kind of boondoggle. So I don't think that, well, this is, of course, is try to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative, but the United States will not be able to do it.
Well, if I could.
Sure.
I would argue that the Belt and Road idea or initiative is overly projected as something geostrategic. An analogy I would have is what China is trying to do is very much like what Nixon tried to do when he came to China some 40, 50 years back, or what Japan tried to do by advocating the flying goose pattern of development. There was a lot of discussion about Japan's geostrategic design too. The essence of the Belt and Road Initiative is to invest in poor countries and nurture them as potential centers of consumption of your product. Of course, a lot of people have extended analysis, but we really need to move away from studying, let's say, an African country by just looking at the inflow of Chinese investment. We have to look at that country from bottom up and see what that particular economy is doing in interaction with all external sources of investment and what may come with each source of that investment and trade. So it gives us 10, let's say 5 or more, 10 years. I think people will come to understand the development of the initiative quite differently.
Okay, but Professor Jia, I'd like to know how does China view this plan proposed by Biden? Does China welcome this plan, or does China feel this is some kind of bribery?
No, this is not new. This is a different way of talking. If you remember, under President Trump, the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, had similar arguments and favored similar ideas, and together with Japan and Australia as well. But this is a court type of response to this. I think they call it high-quality regional investment structure. What we really need to see happening is some sort of bridging effort at the technical level between these two initiatives, rather than defining each other's rivalry and rejecting each other, to see what we can together do for the benefit of promoting some real infrastructure and real industrialization at a particular place. Let's say use Sri Lanka as just a dummy for discussion. And we go to the Sri Lankans together, we have a three-way conversation of sorts, and really work to see how the U.S. and China or its allies can fit in. Actually, this is what the Thai government has been advocating, and has done a good deal of, made a good deal of progress. What the Thai did was to invite both the Chinese and Japanese and Koreans to together develop the southeastern Bay of Bangkok. And why not, right? Each country's companies have their own peculiar areas of expertise, and in the end, it's the Thai that benefits from these investments.
Okay, Professor Lucas, how do you look at China's way in dealing with its relations with some of U.S. allies? For example, how do you look at China's counter-sanctions against some EU individuals and organizations? Because some would say there's a risk of further alienating the European Union and driving them into the anti-China camp, which is something that the U.S. would like to see.
Well, I think the Chinese counter-sanctions were an immediate response following on from what we've heard from the panel because of its surprise at the European Union's action. Even though those European Union sanctions, I must emphasize, were very, very limited. I mean, they simply targeted 4 individuals. It was the fact that it was, as you noted, the first sanctions in more than 30 years. And Beijing was just showing, look, if you sanction us, we will respond. The question is, where do you go next? Now, there are interlocking issues here. If you look at it from the issues, which we've talked all about, such as Xinjiang, such as Hong Kong, the question is the relationship of human rights to these questions. But speaking purely on the economic front, remember that China has this investment deal, which is pending with the European Union. It is a major investment deal. It would follow on from the idea that you've just heard in that excellent comment from Professor Jia, that you don't have to see everything in terms of rivalry, that you can see areas where there are mutual interests. And the question right now
like
for
strawberry jam,
and for
orange
Beijing,
marmalade from
in this case,
from Turkey.
can you find that mutual interest again? Can you find that
from everything?
Where you don't have a win-lose
hungry
situation?
People,
you have a win-win economic situation. And you can extend that beyond China and Europe and say, look, when we go to other areas of the world, because what Joe Biden said to Boris Johnson was not targeted at China. What he simply said was, look, Britain is cutting its foreign aid budget by 70%. He was effectively saying, perhaps you should rethink this in terms of contributing to development. Can you have all countries working towards development.
Badgering Germany about
because one institution that has not been mentioned here is if we had had this discussion even 20 years ago, we would be talking about the World Bank as being a driver for support of initiatives like this. We would be talking about United Nations development funds. Because we position these things in terms of rivalry, we tend to say, oh, China development versus European development, European sanctions versus Chinese sanctions. Both sides need to step in from confrontation and try to find a way into a more cooperative, or at least a relationship where they coexist with each other.
Professor Xiaoyafeng, how do you think China should deal with its relations with the U.S. allies, especially when some of the American allies are following the U.S. in making some policies that are not in China's interest? How do you think China should respond?
Yeah, I think that China should deal with the U.S. ally with greater respect and humility. Wolf diplomacy, stridency, and bullying will not help China's positions. These actions will only promote the distancing of many countries, companies, etc. from China. China can tell foreign countries just to stay out of China's domestic issues, or it may consider whether there is merit to some foreign observations and complaints. Many times, China's first reaction seems totally defensive, but China later reacts more calmly and deliberately to foreign observation and complaints. I think it's China's choice, but the reaction to China's decision may differ.
Okay, Professor Dash, actually shortly after the Alaska meeting, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with his Russian counterpart, and they signed a joint statement denouncing the Western hegemony led by the U.S. He then visited 6 Middle East countries, including Saudi Arabia and Turkey, which are traditional American allies, as well as Iran. And this week, as we know, he's hosting 4 ASEAN ministers in Fujian. So some would say this is China's way of seeking support under increasing diplomatic pressure from the West. I'd like to get a view on this.
See, I pulled it down.
Well, I think it's natural, for China to try to develop relationships with other states. The relationship with Russia, of course, is particularly interesting, and it's an issue that, frankly, complicates U.S. relations, with some of its other global allies. For the Europeans, the big game in town is Russia. Now, if you were, to go back to the period of the opening to China under President Nixon, National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger, the strategy for the opening of China for them was to, try to detach China from the, perceived Soviet-dominated communist bloc. And, in a way, Russia today is sort of
for a very long time,
a bridge player. I think, naturally, they don't have a lot of interest with China. They have a long common border and a history of competition and even limited military conflict. But on the other hand, the United States is sort of being, painted into a corner of taking a hardline anti-Russian view, which in a way makes Russia and China, strange bedfellows. And I'm not saying that there aren't reasons in terms of Russian behavior that the Europeans are worried about them, or that the United States has, taken positions in opposition to them. But in terms of sort of balance of power politics, that's a complicating issue. And it makes our relations with Europe complicated, and it makes our relations with China complicated as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Professor Jia, actually what Professor Desh just now said reminds me of what Brzezinski warned in his book, The Grand Chessboard, that the most standard scenario for America would be a grand coalition of China, Russia and perhaps Iran, an anti-hegemonic coalition united not by ideology but by complementary grievances.
Yeah, that could work.
So do you think they're now perhaps heading towards that coalition?
Brazil, Russia, India, Iran, China, South Africa. There you go. That could work. Why wouldn't it work? You could put Cuba with you have 2 C's, 2 I's, 2 C's.
And that's why
You add countries up all day long before anybody notices. Indonesia, Canada, Cambodia. What else could you get in there?
And also, China and Russia have had a Cold War history of some years of alliance, but most of the years the Chinese want autonomy and Russian, the Soviets had their own way of doing things. Going back a little bit, I think in terms of the Chinese desired Chinese reaction to the European Union sanctions or the impact on the trade agreement, I think China would be really wise just to go ahead and implement as many of the reforms, and many areas of the economic liberalization that was promised.
Cool and plastic. It smells like a plastic swimming pool.
The European Union voting to approve it. And that would be a way to convince others that China is very serious about getting into this kind of agreement, is serious about reforming agenda, and is serious about narrowing some of the conceptual, or you can call ideological, gaps in domestic economic management.
Professor
Okay,
Lucas,
but the question was, how much trouble can I actually get in?
Well, I think those are very interesting comments, both with respect to China
stealing North Korean plates on the
Speaking
Chinese
about
side
Russia,
of the border.
The problem right now is that Russia is a discredited bridge
asking for a friend
between the United States and China. It's discredited because of some of its activities, such as the nerve agent attacks that it's carried out abroad and at home. It's discredited because of some of its actions in Ukraine. It's discredited because some of its actions in the Middle East.
They won, didn't they?
And perhaps most importantly, when you talk about America and Europe, it's discredited because of its cyber attacks and its interference in elections. So I don't think you're going to see an easing of the U.S. and the European position vis-a-vis Russia, especially with the Biden administration coming back.
Your lawnmower got away. You better catch it.
So that means, all right, we get back to, which is, who else is involved in terms of possibly, you say, an interlocutor, being involved in terms of working with both the United States and working with China.
Very nice. You won the spelling bee once.
Cooperative, or at least a coexisting
Your dad wasn't
relationship.
there, was he?
And there I want to build with what the panel said to make 2 suggestions. The first thing to say is that you have to look at Asian countries and European countries not as being in one camp or another. You can't just simply portray European countries as following the United States. And you have to look at Asian countries and say, look, a number of Asian countries are now involved
economically,
in
politically, or militarily.
Even though the U.S. is not part of it. Does that make them rivals of China? Where does it position them? And once you look at this in this way, that raises a second question, which is, where do you look at now with international organizations between the United States and between China? So, for example, when we talk about these issues, such as the racial issue in the United States, or such as the issues such as Xinjiang in China, can you have a transparency, or at least more of an openness to the United Nations or to an Amnesty International to say, look, we don't consider you an enemy to start off with. We recognize that we have very good things about our country. We also have issues in our country. Can both the United States and China recognize that and find a way of having a dialogue which is not necessarily always directly between themselves, but also involves other countries as well?
Okay, Professor Sayafon, I mean, if we look at the Quad, if we look at NATO, and if we look at China's 25-year strategic cooperation agreement with Iran and China's closer ties with Russia,
NATO.
Is the world increasingly dividing into 2 different camps?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that it would be a vast overstatement to see the world divided into a Cold War-like 2 camp plus neutral countries situation. The world is too complex.
Not far enough back like mine is.
There's the Western core of shared interest encompassing the countries, for example, that have sanctioned China over Xinjiang, country like US, Canada, European Union, plus UK, Australia, New Zealand. But these countries are very far from China. There is no Soviet Union plus Eastern European type of Warsaw Pact, country of Southeast Asia, as well as both Koreas, certainly Vietnam, we have different relations with China. Some very warm and close, at least at the state political level. And like Cambodia, where Chinese influence is paramount, but other Asian states will be more standoffish. Therefore, no building of regional military alliance against the U.S. or Western interests from the Chinese side. Also, I think that the situation is quite different from the Cold War era. Now, on a number of aspects that I think there is a rivalry now, but unlike Cold War Europe, the two camps were confronting each other along the burning wall, but there's no such thing going on in East Asia or in Asia now. And also, between the two sides,
don't worry, the government will find a way to start something.
The U.S., China, there are much more economic and trade interaction and independence.
What do you think of Canada flying a destroyer to whatever the fuck it was?
This is very unlikely during the Cold War era that the United States and the Soviet Union had very little economic relationship.
Okay, Professor Dash, how do you look at this?
You should have capitalized on that. You would have been ahead of the
Well,
game.
I agree completely. I mean, what worries me is I think in the much of the public discussion in the United States of our relationship with China, we look at it through the lens of the Cold War, and I think that's a mistake, for the reasons that we've been talking about. The Cold War rivalry with the Soviet Union was global, and it was largely military. The rivalry with China
it wasn't the whole world
is
against
mostly
the
regional at this point, and it involves a lot of other things aside from the military aspects of it. And I think it's important for us to to not try to cram this into the Cold War framework. I think that the big question, if I just throw this out on the table, sort of implicit in our discussion,
the Cold War. The Cold War
has
didn't,
been
and communism, socialism,
Professor Lucas's view that the way to defuse a more intense conflict with China is to emphasize the cooperative elements in U.S.-Chinese relations, and also integrate or get international organizations more involved in some of these issues. And I think that's certainly an important way to think about this. But I think there is, at least for the sake of argument, an alternative way of thinking about managing U.S.-Chinese relations. And that would be the sort of traditional balance of power approach, that characterized Europe under the concert of Europe after the Napoleonic Wars. And I don't think these two things are necessarily incompatible. But given that big powers have a natural tendency towards competition, and they often find it easy to overlook their common interests, that also thinking about managing great power politics through a balance of power framework is also important. And that's why I said at the beginning, the United States is reinvigorating alliances primarily in response to China. That's the bad news. But the good news is there's a way of doing it that could be stabilizing, not to overthrow China or maintain U.S. hegemony in the region, but to stabilize the region by protecting U.S. allies and reassuring them that even with the rise of China, that their security will not be fundamentally compromised.
Okay, but Professor Dash,
I mean, when
value diplomacy, when ideology
now the guy driving is like, yeah, we're going to hit it dead on this way.
Biden is doing right now. Then what happens to trade, to investment, and do you think cooperation is still possible?
Well, I'm a realist, and so, I get nervous when values, drive diplomacy to the exclusion of interests. I do believe in democracy, I do believe in human rights, but I also believe that there are limits to what external actors can do to shape those inside another great power. And I think a focus on interests can also be a stabilizing factor. And I think we ought to appreciate that possibility as well in U.S.-Chinese relations.
Okay, Professor Jia,
warheads are stabilizing
factor. When the United States
themselves are not stable, it's like the opposite of a catalyst. What do you say about that, Bob?
Adjust its foreign policy accordingly, because some are suggesting that China should abandon its non-alignment policy. What do you think?
No, China should not abandon that policy. That policy has worked well, and China is fundamentally different from the United States. Precisely because we are here in Asia and we have China has so many
look at the differences.
Countries
wheat and rice compared to
each of these countries have thousands of years of interaction with China, a lot of complex history. If we were going to turn around either here in Asia or go over to Africa, Latin America, Middle East, and have this sort of with us or against us kind of choice, we are going to be destroying our relationship with any of these. Earlier there was a point about balance. I think these notions work, but they reflect more of a North American point of view, because the North American geography leaves way much room for let's say, doing things abroad without having to worry about consequences. But what China needs to do better now is to reflect
like a military analysis
itself into such a steaming binge that so many actors, both from afar and close, seem to be, bandwagoning with a so-called value-based or alliance-based policies led by the United States. And one of the things I would suggest is that here in China, we rethink this argument about non-interference in domestic affairs. That is a principle on the book in the UN Charter, but even if you just want to do business, with another country or with another society, and people there, how their sentiments have a choice. They don't have to buy your stuff. You have to make yourself as an entity, amicable to as many around the world as possible. That's one way to maintain stability, one way to maintain, eventually to win a competition, rather than saying, well, you have to, join my camp because I'm facing another camp.
Okay, thank you, Professor Jia. We've been talking to Professor Jia Daojun from the School of International Studies at Peking University, Professor Michael Dash, Professor of International Relations at the University of Notre Dame and Director of the Notre Dame International Security Center, Xia Yafeng, Professor of History at Long Island University, and Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics and American Studies at Birmingham University. Thank you all for being with us tonight. And that's all the time we have for this edition of World Today. Remind our listeners, if you want to hear this episode again or to catch up on previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching for World Today. And for further discussion, please follow us on Twitter. It's China Plus News. I'm Zhao Ying. Thank you so much for listening. Have a nice weekend.
All right, so they didn't say paranoid, but they said wacky. He used the term wacky, which is roughly equivalent to calling someone paranoid. Oh, he's whack. That's wacky. His thought patterns are paranoid. Yes, delusional. And we're going straight to the news here.
Now the news. I'm Shane Bigham. The Chinese foreign minister says the country's development conforms to the common expectations and interests of all countries in the region and should not be blocked. Wang Yi was responding to questions about China-U.S. relations following meetings in Fujian province with the foreign ministers of Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and South Korea. He says China's urging the United States to respect China's core interests in development. He says that in facing the challenges of globalization in the post-pandemic era, China and the U.S. should have more dialogue and cooperation in this region. He also says China welcomes dialogue on the basis of equality and mutual respect, adding that China does not accept that one country has the final say in world affairs. Passenger trips topped over 51 million Saturday, the first day of the nation's three-day tomb sweeping day holiday. The reading jumped over 157% from the same period of last year. The China State Railway Group says Saturday saw approximately 14 million passenger trips, setting a single-day record for this year. Figures also show that airlines handled nearly 1.5 million passenger trips in China on Saturday, a jump of around 370% compared to the first day of the holiday last year. Tomb Sweeping Day, also known as Qingming Festival, was yesterday, Sunday the 4th. More than 40 people are dead and 9 others injured as flash floods and landslides hit East Nusa Tenggara province in southern Indonesia. Officials say the disaster has buried dozens of houses, swept away several other houses, and destroyed a bridge. Hundreds of people are still missing in the area around one local village.
On Monday.
Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says Iran will not hold any direct or indirect talks with representatives of the United States in the meeting of the 2015 nuclear agreement participants scheduled for Tuesday in Vienna. He says Iran will return to full compliance with the agreement after verifying the removal of sanctions. The senior diplomat says Iran will not accept any step-by-step plan to revive the agreement, but only the lifting of all the sanctions imposed by the administration of former U.S. President Donald Trump. The April 6th meeting in Vienna will be convened after a virtual reunion on Friday of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action participants. U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price confirmed on Friday that Washington representatives will attend the Vienna encounter and said the country remains open to direct talks with Iran. France is making efforts to ramp up its COVID-19 vaccination campaign amid surging infections and a need for jabs. Health workers in the city of Sarcelles, north of Paris, spent Easter Sunday vaccinating people against COVID-19. The French military is expected to open 7 vaccination centers starting Tuesday as part of an effort to ramp up vaccinations. The French government says 12 million doses have been put in people's arms since the vaccine rollout started. France has the world's highest reported COVID-19 deaths and the highest number of cases in Europe. China's major internet companies have registered a 29% year-on-year increase in business revenue in the first 2 months of this year. According to the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, the companies raked in revenues of around $30 billion. The operating profit of major internet companies grew by nearly 20% year-on-year. The stats cover enterprises with annual revenues from internet services of around 5 million yuan in the previous year. In the CBA, Kyle Fogg got a game-high 27 points in his debut for Liaoning, helping his new team to a 112. Ramp up its COVID-19 vaccination campaign amid surging. Desmond Wells recorded a game-high 38.
Easier and more efficient, including vacuum lifts, palletized robots, and a shrink wrapper. The monorail is at the backbone of the operation.
Oh yeah, you got a monorail in your warehouse. That's how important your health care work is for the world. You have a monorail.
Heater. The $85 million drone is designed to test technologies for future flying vehicles on other planets. Achieving flight in the Martian atmosphere would be a remarkable accomplishment. as lift is much more complicated on the red planet compared to Earth. NASA officials say Ingenuity is expected to make its first flight this coming Sunday, with data reaching Earth a day later. Dave Mistich, NPR News.
Unlike all the other
U.S. futures contracts are trading higher at this hour. The Dow futures contract up about 0.6%. I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News.
I don't think you're correct.
Support for NPR comes from Waystar, offering healthcare payment technology designed to streamline the revenue cycle and improve the financial experience for patients so healthcare providers can focus on what matters most. More at waystar.com.
This is one of these nature ocean documentaries. Sounds like ocean music. I'm about to give up on these.
Into the area near Tampa if the pond wall should collapse. The water is reported to contain phosphorus and nitrogen from a phosphate mine adjoining the retention pond. The leak was discovered earlier in the week, and engineers attempted to secure the breach but failed. And that's the news. I'm Shane Baker.
You gotta tear it down from the top, or it's gonna fuck it. You're gonna get so fucked. So fucked.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you live from Beijing. Roundtable.
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 Connecting China and the world.
We bring you fun and timely discussions about what's affecting our lives everywhere, every day. Tune in to Roundtable, where the East meets the West. And
tell us about the demise of the coin laundromat.
My name's Longneck, the last living white giraffe left in the world. At the beginning of the 20th century, giraffes were very common in Western Africa. Since 1970, consecutive droughts killed more than half the wildlife population, giving rise to the price hike in meat, which increased the poaching of my family. Especially
this is Tony, the
makes us
ESL.
more vulnerable and easy.
Wash or Tony or whatever the fuck his name is.
Of the Zhou family band, or Zhou Jia Ban in Chinese. We have been actively performing with the wind and percussion instruments since the Qing dynasty. The suona, or the double reed horn, is the lead instrument.
Very high pitch. It's very high pitch.
The skin and fur off our backs. I don't believe there's any hope for me, but I hope my story will show you a different narrative.
Wow, what is going on?
We deserve to live as much as you do.
Oh, dear.
Ending plague, spirits float like the smoke from a lemon-berry haze, set it ablaze in the most legendary of ways. Straight bullets may ricochet and put an end to your days. See, it's not all fun and games when the semi-automatic rings and the local pastors in the church hollering out your government name. It's such a shame.
This track's called War Games.
Lame. You a college dropout. Now you're just another one of Trump's toughest slaves. White supremacy. We kill that shit in 1,000,000 ways. Mask up in these streets and punch these maggots in their fucking face. Disappear them off this planet. Gone without a fucking trace. A gun tucked in the waist. Give y'all bumped a few crumbs for the taste. So pump your brakes. Hollow tip slugs. Gonna make you jump in place. The warriors stay ready for this ritual hunt and chase. Cause these racist devils got our people locked up in a cage. I turn up the snare. The shotgun pump gon' hit them with a ton of bass. These ain't no games we're playing. It's the art of mayhem we're displaying. Talk shit. You end up rotting in the ditch decaying. That's a cinch. Fuck the pigs. We making them crispy bacon. Death to the feds. Death to all the sick border patrol.
This don't get close. Yeah, no.
You already know, especially that the outfit passed away. You know how I do.
can't categorize me. I seen the game front row. It was like Spike Lee. At your baby mama house is where I might be. She said.
Jump in the water, speed.
It's HB.
I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. Watch she said I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. I love the rain when it falls, yeah, I'm blessed. Of the fame and the cars and the jets. I had them thinking I was gone to the psych ward. I never left to live the life you would die for. I tell that hoe I can't save her, I'm no lifeguard. Maybe you can get the deed, but I might charge. Pull up to the spot, they're like, who is that there? Hands up, give me the loot like a cashier. What you thought, are you dumb? I don't play shit. I killed you and your brother with the same clips. That kind of bullshit you've been talking, boys, ain't you? I'm a different man now, leave you faceless. Watch you said it, I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. Watch you said I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest, yo. Versus spot, then I'm leaving unidentified. Just a rental, had to drop it off at Enterprise. Shell casings in the whip, had to check it twice. I think my OGs for that shit, they get good advice. Yeah, this about to be a genocide. These motherfuckers want me dead, but I can never die. I'm the reason why your wifey said she met a guy. 20 minutes in a pusher just to get inside. Yeah. We are not the same kind. You gotta pay dues, I already paid twice. Y'all don't make moves, all you do is waste time. I'ma always be woke while you haters stay blind. Watch you said it, I'ma get that spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest. Watch you said it, I'ma get.
I'm not sure what that is.
That spinach. I be sinning, I'm winning. They don't like it, yeah, I bet. I see the pain in their heart and their chest.
Clap back, when my people at, we about to clap back. When my rasta at, we about to clap back. When my natives at, we about to clap back, clap back. Freedom's all I wanted, but I couldn't afford it. My baby's got the spirit, just brilliant and gorgeous. Oh yes, self-defense endorsement. Always a quiet when she about to load it, hold it. It's amor about to load it, oh shit. And the whole body will support it. Now go ahead, le dicen mija, come on now, go ahead, go ahead. Clap back, give them a standing ovation. Gotta tear the shit down to rebuild all of our nations. We do it on the track, we could do it on the record. Got killers on the team, we could take all of the pressure. Let's go, man, esto va aquí.
It's the Batmobile.
Now I'm about to put y'all with some new shit. Flick that.
Gunshot liquor,
50 drum beating like sofa. Out in Trinidad where my boy smoke a coca. Your homie got hit, he was riding like a chauffeur. Planet of the Apes, I was blood clot coca. Poke pop, come with a strap, swing off the shoulder. In the coffin, shutting the letters, giving you closure. You ever get close, something coming out the holster. People ride the train, they're gonna see you on a poster. We poster, but you never talk on what we approach. Get the black go online and now you're doing the most. Don't kill him in my yard, nigga, like I could host. Didn't notice they pull guns when you thought you could roast. Just a dose. Know you love niggas, need some milligrams. Sitting with a milli, he be posting it on Instagram. Dust says, love me, selling quarters out the kilogram. Chrome piles so good, swear I used the pillow back, baby. Fried chicken, not still crazy. Shaking up the ground like an earthquake in Haiti. Run around just like how you niggas don't see me, you got it. Metro still trying to play me. They said I wasn't sick, but I'm sick though. I give you gangsta rap, our calypso. We never stop eating like it's a pit bull. And young boy can't stop squeezing, he got his we with the hammers. Shreddy in the kitchen, chicken like Louisiana. Killer like Diana. I go to sleep with a rifle in my pajamas. I was childish, but my Gambino no Atlanta.
gunshot for your head down. Grind, nigga, TG.
Man, them niggas that we beefing is so lame. My drums and clips, my gun black and it spit like Obey. Four white boys let it sing like Coldplay. I sat back and got a flashback on my old days like Blocker. 30 shots up in the fucking chopper. He got shot, but shot back and couldn't see the doctor. Nigga play up, cause nigga how it's better. Remembering the day my brother got it, couldn't get up. So my friend got a Mac 11, 3 years to wet up. And 2 bad light-skinned bitches for the setup. My city getting crazy and nigga. Moms losing their babies, I know the pain to have to carry my nigga to a place to get to bury my nigga. Fuck, but since then, we got a couple heads to bury the trigger. That's what I keep a gun for, cause in these streets it's a blood sport. Not to mention links from the gun store. You shouldn't have brought him here, they're catching bodies here. As soon as niggas slap that metal on that column here, I don't need no one, I'll blast it by myself. And I'll keep beating metal to the plastic on them nose. Shoot shots to the pin break, niggas been fake. And my target is that big J. Shotgun test, stab his body, but I'm a pop aimer. You know me, I'll take his head off his body. Full shirt looking like ketchup. Fuck, I couldn't catch up. Found dead at the scene, no need for a stretcher.
Nothing on my wrist, nothing on my neck, nothing on my fist, it's all on my check. Don't you get the gist? I got the confidence, don't need a brand on my chest. Hey, I know what my value is. Hey, wealthy people don't need jewelry. Hey, look at 21/7 and Bill Gates. Hey, the rap industry got a complex. I turned reality into a lucid dream. I turned a lucid dream into whipped cream. Cash rules, nothing around me. I only use it for paper planes, actually. I'm the opposite of Microsoft, I'm big and hard. Let that resonate, maybe a little more. I got that lyricism sprinkled with a lot of flow. I make my sauce authentic on a chopping board. Baby, it's spicy, be careful. Don't shake the bubble too much, be gentle. It's kinda high on the Scoville level. Don't burn your tongue, don't get it in your eyes too. I turned reality into a lucid dream. I turned a lucid dream into whipped cream. Cash rules, nothing around me. I only use it for paper planes, actually. Self-care, yeah, got a lot of that. No food tastes good as having a six-pack. You should cut your snacks same way you cut that crack. Then you wouldn't look fat as a Cadillac. baby, looking like a snack. I can see you did them squats on the squat rack. I don't need a beat, I don't really need a track. You can be my producer with your booty clap. I turned reality into a lucid dream. I turned a lucid dream into whipped cream. Cash rules, nothing around me. I only use it for paper planes, actually. Baby, keep your pants on, zip tight, locked off. This is not the time for you to rack it up. We be in court, the judge is getting cross. You robbed the bank, baby, you took your mask off. You took $100K and left it at my front door. Thought it was funny, nice joke. Cause you know I bail you out no matter what the cost. I need that flavor, baby, shit, cause I got the sauce. Cause I got the sauce. I said it cause I got the sauce. Shit, cause I got the sauce. Shit, cause I got the sauce.
Real traffic report today. Stroller upright, covering 2 left lanes on the 401. How the fuck did I get there?
They tryna throw a gun on me. It's only allegations. If it was mine, it was in case they tried to run on me. 3 to 5 is what they asking, but I won't fight the fate. Got a little daughter to raise, so I'ma fight the case. When I got that phone call, man, I couldn't top the doc. You an angel, I'm white in that wooden box. That's a vision I could never remove. And if I go, it's cause I'm dancing with the devil in the heavenly mood. That's like mixing water with oil and crippling with the blood in that. Fuck this gang shit. I just really want my brother back. I want that joy put back in his mother's heart. I want them bullets reversed that hit his brother's car. When I back the ratchet ahead and back in the ways. And we ain't friends, this ain't back in the day. 2017, I probably put the map to his face. Fuck these shows, I'm strapped up at the back of the stage. I'll shoot it up and then I'll join the crowd. On my hit shit, while I'm running, disassembling it on some sick shit. Take the springs out so we won't shoot in ballistics. And that's how you get away with charges on some stick shit. Yeah, I was raised with the savages. Grew up with them savages, never ran in my savages. I only sat back and stood tall. And this trap shit ain't the only way I'm from my black master.
Now to the Driving Show with Peter Crispo on Global News Radio 6.
As those impaired by alcohol, license suspension, criminal record, fines, even jail time. Plan ahead. A message from Arrive Alive Drive Sober, sponsored by Desjardins Insurance.
When you need to know. Breaking news. Some Trump supporters managed to breach the walls of the Capitol building and actually make their way to the Senate floor. Traffic. The right lane is
bank 6 identical whips when I hold it back. That's what I hold it at. It's there ain't no holding back. Gotta move now. The swings up in the lower strap. I got 7 in that whip. Let my block number 17.
Whether they hacked completely, then the whole security stuff comes up where it's like, does everyone have their 2E authentication on? Which I hope you guys do. I do.
Telling me and sharing with me their similar experiences, whether they're having dealing with something like you, Miranda, where their accounts have been duplicated, whether they've been hacked completely, then the whole security stuff comes up where it's like, does everyone have their 2E authentication on? Which I hope you guys do. I do, but I don't got hacked. Yeah. And one story came through to me though. This one woman who follows me in Ottawa,
with coping,
she was like, I had my, okay, wait for it because I would have never thought.
35% increase in human 24/7 volumes, which is their front door for those seeking mental health and addiction.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I was like, oh my gosh. She's like, yeah, they were in LA. They racked up a $500 bill. They took $400 from my PayPal. No. And I was like, oh man, that sucks. She's like, yeah, well, the real crappy part is because they hacked into my account and I lost access to my account, trying to get a hold of someone at Uber, not using your app. And I'm like, oh my God, that's right. Because anytime you have an issue, you're reporting it through your app. And now she's locked out of it. Yeah. Challenge, right? You can't actually get to anybody. And so when I was on Instagram, I had a whole bunch of people reporting it because I got like stupid amount of messages behind the scenes saying this uses you. But then it took days. It took like 4 or 5 days. And in that time, how many people got their credit cards? Like gave their credit cards to these stupid people who hacked in, right? Or
I've noticed a lot of influencers and content creators lately who do contests. Like really, even in their posts or in their descriptions of the contest or whatever it is that they're giving away, they've been saying, do not, like, unless you get a message directly from me, do not give your information to anyone, because it's just, oh God, the world we're living in. Actually, I have a really funny story.
Tell, please. I need to laugh.
Okay. So, you know those phone calls you get where it's oh, this is the government of Canada and you're gonna go to jail if you don't, talk to
yeah.
Which, like, we all know is right? Yeah. But unfortunately, not everybody does. So they're obviously still getting money from people and ripping people off. Anyway, I got a phone call from one of them. I love messing with those people because at least then you're taking away some of the time of the day where they could be, robbing someone else.
Yeah.
And so I get this guy. He's got an accent, and he's like, "Hello, my name is Mr. Smith.
You're not
I'm calling." Or he goes, "Sorry, well, how can I help you?" And I was
those
like, "You
calls
called
and the
me.
person's not even trying hard.
You called me, so you tell me why you're calling me." So then he's like, gets into his little spiel. "Oh well, there's something at risk, and you need to give me your SSN number and da 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 da." And I was like, okay, here it is. And I just was like 2648 F K YOU, and he let me spell it out. Usually they hang up when they know that you know. And then he told me to f off. He was like, and hung up the phone.
It's so good. It was so like right on. Like, did you just think about it right away? I mean, that would have taken you some time to actually. That's good.
Yeah. He was like, "I need your SIN number." I was like, I'm gonna spell something out for him and see how long it takes for him to catch on.
I'm gonna use that. So I once did that too. Whenever they call me too, I always play with them. Like, I've actually picked up while teaching, because the phone number, right? Yeah. So I'll be at Humber in the middle of class teaching, and I'm like, "Guys, we're putting this on speaker. Let's play with them." I've done that before, which is fun. But once I had one of them go off on me. Yeah. And call me see you next Tuesday, and told me to go get laid, and just went to town. And I was like, whoa, I'm like, this is a good
Yeah, Johnny's had one of those before too, like the really aggressive that just keep fighting. Like, I always want one of those people, because it's then you can lay into them and just be like
cathartic.
Yes.
Totally. You can just say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Gosh,
fiber optic, satellite, 5G, 6G. We have 4 different GPS networks.
Ripping someone.
Two space stations and the moon base and Mars rovers.
But I had another one 2 weeks ago, and he was like, "I'm calling from the government about your taxes," and I was like,
"Fuck
okay."
Your taxes,
and he's like, "Well, I need your address." I'm like, "Well, you have my address?"
Yeah.
I need to verify. Well, I need to verify who you are. I'm like, Can you give me your number and I'll call you back?" He goes, "No, ma'am, that's not a thing." I'm like, "Okay, then. Well, this is not a legitimate call." I mean, the reality is it was so close to what it didn't sound like. It was scary. It was eerie, the fact that it sounded authentic. And I knew afterwards, I'm like, oh my God, this guy was like, I remember watching a news story a few years ago, and it was, oh my God, I felt so bad for this woman. She thought that it was a legit call. Yeah. And they asked for, I think it was like Bitcoin or something. So this woman actually made a huge withdrawal from her account. Like, they did a whole news story on her. Like, I don't know if I'd want someone to do a news story on me. So I'd be like, but she withdrew all this money from her account, did the Bitcoin transfer, and was so scared. Like, she didn't tell her husband because she thought that they had convinced her that she did something wrong. So she kind of did it behind her husband's back and didn't tell anyone.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, oh my God, guys, like, a lot of money. And actually, I was just interviewed about this for a television show that they do, like, all these investigative reports. And the journalist who interviewed me was telling me about an ethical hacker that she had also interviewed for the story. And he was saying that almost always the hackers will contact their victims and try to get money out of them. And I was like, oh my God, no. She's like, did they contact you? I'm like, nope, I haven't been contacted at all. And she was saying that they will ask for hundreds of thousands of dollars to give you your account back.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. Like,
yeah,
that's insane. And actually, she was saying that this ethical hacker who she interviewed, he actually got his account hacked, but he found the hacker who hacked him. And he was this man in Nigeria, and this guy started freaking out because apparently if you're caught for hacking in that country, they will cut off your limbs.
Oh,
come on.
shit.
But like, you know, the thing is, this is happening more and more in every element. Like, what are we like? In terms of Facebook, like, they really should be more proactive. Like, you can see it happening to so many people. This shouldn't be happening, especially when you're relying on social media. You know, for your, this is what you need every day, right?
It should be a lot easier for you, the actual owner of that page, to get your stuff back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It should be a lot easier than what they're doing. You know, yeah. I guess there's all these stages that you have to go through to get your stuff back.
And I think a lot of people will give up. Like right now, I'm fighting tooth and nail. Like I'm fighting hard, going back and forth with Facebook. I'm like, nope, this doesn't sit well with me. They've actually tried to close the case on me. I'm like, I don't think so. I'm like, we're going to get this back. And I don't understand why it's taking so long, because can't you just go in and kick them out?
Yeah.
Ban them from Facebook, something, and give it back to me. So I don't even know why it's an issue, because it should not be an issue. Second, I've been saying it for 9 years. That's when I started things up with my brand. As a content creator, influencer, whatever you want to call me, entrepreneur, even for business owners, I would gladly pay a monthly or yearly fee to Facebook just to know that I have some kind of support and some extra security.
Yeah.
I would not mind at all.
Someone to talk to, someone to call, actually, and get them on the line.
There is not even a button that you can hit to say, help, I've been hacked. Like, it's insane.
They go and it says create new account.
They have all these bots in place right now that God forbid you should say something.
This is going nowhere.
Like I was joking with one of my buddies, and I said, I'm gonna punch you, ha ha ha. Well, in 2 seconds, they flagged it. They sent me a message saying that it violated community standards, and because it was violent, then I was put in Facebook jail, which means that they ban you from your account for like 2-3 days. Last week, I was in my kitchen talking about a bug that I saw when I walked into the kitchen, this big disgusting bug, and I was like freaking out on my stories on Instagram, and I wrote
other areas of the city, causing more damage, according to investigators. Police say they laid charges, but didn't elaborate on how many people are being investigated or the type of offenses. I'm Michelle Mackey. 680 News Time, 8:34. It's the second consecutive year that Easter festivities have been altered by pandemic life, but despite the altered celebrations, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wished Canadians a happy Easter via Twitter this morning. Trudeau says even though we're in a pandemic, we can still share the hope and joy of this day with our loved ones virtually.
I'm lucky to have the people I love the most living in the same household as me, but I know for many Canadians, this Easter will be
which is somebody else's house. Don't forget that. He lives in the Governor General's house. Who's the Governor General? I don't know. That person, I don't know.
Enjoy this day with those who
they're all under investigation.
Soon this crisis will end. And when it does, we will build a stronger.
They're going to be running the country from jails. What's going to happen?
Premier Doug Ford also releasing a similar message, reminding Ontarians this year serves as a reminder to get back to the basics and be thankful for the small blessings in our lives.
And Christians have been marking another COVID-era Easter, singing hymns through masks, even at the Vatican.
What just happened? What the fuck just happened? Damn it. What the fucking hell?
And it's become a big disaster. In 2011, Thailand's monsoon floods were the most damaging in its history. Millions of of my people, including me and my family, were displaced and homeless. Some had to escape the city.
Oh,
Nice, eh?
Beautiful tiles.
Yes,
I like the black and white tiles.
Yeah, I wanted like a funky Moroccan vibe.
Yeah.
And I
Sunnybrook, and he's worked closely with the province on leading Operation Remote Immunity, which was instrumental in delivering and administering vaccines to over 30 remote fly-in First Nation communities in Northern Ontario. The spokesperson for Solicitor General Sylvia Jones thanked Hillier for his service to the province. He adds the province has administered over 2 million vaccines and has the capacity to administer upwards of 150,000 more per day.
680 News Time, 8:36. Mayor Tory says the city is getting another mass vaccination site to help inoculate eligible residents as quickly as possible. The hangar, located at Downsview Park, will be the city's 6th mass vaccination site. It's expected to open tomorrow, but first-day appointments are already fully booked. The effort to get Torontonians to roll up their sleeves comes as the country hit another concerning milestone. More than 1 million Canadians have tested positive for the virus, and hospitals in the province say if cases continue to rise in a matter of weeks, there will be no space left in ICUs. On a positive side, in Canada, more than 6 million vaccine shots have been administered.
Meantime, Health Canada is now issuing a recall on a certain type of disposable mask. 680's Camille Wilson explains.
Health Canada has issued a recall for masks containing graphene or biomass graphene. Studies show the graphene's tiny particles may cause early lung toxicity. 680 News spoke with Dr. Francis Dubé, the director and executive chairman of Zen Graphene Limited, who says that Health Canada has done the right thing.
Health Canada had no information on quality of this, the ability of the coating or the graphene to come off the mask, so there's really a potential risk there to the population. So from our perspective, Health Canada has done absolutely the right thing here to remove these masks and warn the public about the potential dangers of this particular graphene product.
If you have a face mask that is labeled to contain graphene or biomass graphene and have health concerns such as a new or unexplained shortness of breath, discomfort, or difficulty breathing, Health Canada says to consult your doctor. I'm Camille Wilson.
You're listening to All News Radio 680 News. One of the largest COVID-19 outbreaks in professional sports has hit one of Canada's NHL teams. And as Sportsnet 590 The Fan's Callum Ing tells us, more than a dozen players have tested positive and some of them are reportedly very sick.
The Vancouver Canucks have been hit by a COVID-19 outbreak, and the numbers have steadily risen throughout the week with a report of an even higher number today. But a look back. First, it was forward Adam Gaudette who left practice on Tuesday and was added to the NHL COVID-19 protocol list. Many of his teammates followed, including 7 additions on Saturday. This makes it impossible for the Canucks to field a team. So far, they have had 4 games postponed by the NHL. Everything is up in the air, and a report today says more than 20 Canucks coaches and players have tested positive. Other reports say it's possible one of the COVID variants is responsible, leading to severe symptoms. The coming days will determine the next steps for Vancouver. From Sportsnet 590 The Fan, I'm Callum Ing for 680 News.
And the SAG Awards are tonight.
What are you going to do?
Carey Mulligan is up for her nomination for her role in the dark comedy thriller Promising Young Woman. Maria Bakalova is up for Best Supporting Actress in the controversial war.
And earlier, before we started recording, I was messaging Miranda. I'm like, Miranda, Sarah, I sent her this video because I found this video. It came up on my Facebook newsfeed. And it was this woman talking about things that we have in our home that are horrible for us, that are branded as health foods that we should avoid. And then 4 things that will help us with weight loss, like these magic things, but they're not really magic, like they're easily accessible. So I'm like, of course, with our health expert here and holistic nutritionist, I'm like,
fine.
I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat.
I was thirsty, and you
gave me something to drink.
The Scott Mission has been helping Toronto's hungry and homeless since 1941. And this Easter, they really need your help. You can provide a complete meal for just $4.25 and ensure that everyone who comes to the Scott Mission is warmly welcomed by people who care. Make your gift online today at scottmission.com. That's scottmission.com.
Now, the 680 News gas price update. Enpro predicts the price will stay the same at midnight. It will be holding at $1.26.9 a liter at most GTA stations. Traffic and weather.
An inflammatory food, and it is synonymous with weight gain. You eat yogurt, you gain weight. Like, what? Defined. I can say that. If you cut it out of your diet, you'll notice a lot of changes. Like dairy in general, cow's dairy, I would say. And so when you look at a container of yogurt and you see there's 20 grams of sugar, and you know as an adult female, you can't have any more than 24 grams of sugar in your day, what does it look like, right? Like, this is insane. Wow. Yesterday I was just showing Jax, my 11-year-old, because he was like really interested in looking at some fast food places, because this is a common problem, like as a mom. For me, like I want my kid to go out with his friends at lunchtime and feel like he's connecting with them, but I want to make sure he's trying to choose and understand the right choices. So we looked at an Oreo milkshake. There's 120 grams of sugar in it. That is 28.8 teaspoons. That is for an adult male, so 36 grams of added sugar. And again, that's recommendations. I don't think you should have that much. That's 4 times the amount, right? 3.5 times the amount. Crazy town for a milkshake. So, you know, yogurt was the first one. Second one was wheat. Again, another inflammatory food. So you see wheat marketed as whole wheat, you know, great in grains and some fiber, but really it's over-processed. It causes chronic inflammation for the body. They're talking about joint pain. Like I see it manifest in puffiness and digestive inflammation and acne, like you name it, constantly. And weight gain, of course, too, because it converts into sugar in the body. And then the third one was what, cereal, Peter? No, what was that? She was saying it was sugar. It was like fructose, like corn syrup. Yeah, for sure. So corn syrup. It's terrifying to see that sugar is threaded through everything, because our taste buds are so used to having so much sugar. We don't even think that like a taste of like strawberries is like real strawberry, because it doesn't taste as sweet as like.
They're even eating garbage.
14 and a low of 4, sun and cloud for most of us, but there will be the chance for some showers, especially during the afternoon for areas in the west end from Hamilton out towards Brantford. And then for Tuesday, sun and cloud, and then a chance for some evening rain showers for most of the GTA on Tuesday night, and a high of 13 and a low of 5. Tonight's overnight low, 4 degrees.
Right now in downtown Toronto, we're sitting at 10 degrees with a clear sky. Over at Pearson Airport, we have similar conditions, but it's 12 degrees. Still to come on 680 News, we'll have a rundown of your top stories and sports. 680 News time, 8:43.
Hello, I am.
Why is your kid buying milkshakes in a bottle?
We are just made for each other.
Which, by the way, don't have to be refrigerated, I don't think. I'm pretty sure they're ultra high temperature pasteurized. They're like military grade meal replacements. Just pure garbage. Keep it going.
Sugar is used for fermentation, so you won't have as much sugar in a bottle as you see on the label. Mind you, these days, I feel like kombucha's turned more into a pop. So I'm sorry to say this, Pina, but that's why like I thought beverages stay away, because the key is to have something you enjoy is bubbly. It makes you feel like it's a beverage, but as little sugar as possible. So there are some kombuchas that are less sugar. But I would say these, like if you have a couple kombuchas per day, like that's going to contribute to weight loss, to weight gain.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah.
I have one, but I don't, not even every day, but not a couple a day. But yeah, it's crazy because I'm a sugar addict. Like, I don't know, Sarah, how are you with sugar?
You know what, I think I'm very conscious of when I am eating sugar. I have a sweet tooth. I like eating chocolate bars. I like sweet foods. But I also know that they're terrible for you. So like I'm pretty good at moderating my intake of junk food.
I want to know what she ate.
2 a.m. A video making the rounds on social media appears to show a group pouring gasoline in a circle on the road before setting it on fire around a car doing donuts. You can view that video on our website.
Check on your loved ones virtually. The message from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau today in his Easter message, urging Canadians to celebrate safely. Mayor John Tory also had a similar message and thanked residents for adhering to public health measures.
And the province has a new head of the vaccine distribution task force. Dr. Homer Tien, the CEO of Orange Air Ambulances, is replacing retired General Rick Hillier. Dr. Tien, who is also a trauma surgeon at Sunnybrook, will be the operational lead of the task force.
For these stories and more,
Dude,
head to
he's used to operating. Does he understand it's not the same type of operation?
The huge thing for us,
surgical precision and all that, but it's not the same type of operation, is it?
just never given it to them, right? And if they have some juice, like sometimes we'll water it down, but it's like water's their thing, right? Or like I have a soda stream, so it's like flat water or bubbly water, because like I told you, I love bubbles, right? So my soda stream is everything to me. But if you start with them at a young age, they have no idea, you know, what they're missing.
No, but it's reading Lunchables and they're like, oh, Jensen has that at school, and I'm like, good for him.
Oh my goodness, and it's a common problem with peers. Their own. Well, we're talking about everything, whatever we want, because that's what we do on the Time Out Show. Don't go anywhere, because we will be back with more right here on Wilderness Radio 640 Toronto.
I wonder, did you feel a spiritualness there that surprised you in any way?
Very much. And the one thing that
$1 million. Sports at 15 and 45 bucks every hour or anytime at sportsnet.ca/590.
680 News Time, 8:46.
What could be better than starting the golf season with a shot at winning the ultimate foursome? Presented by TaylorMade and the Copper Creek.
A 1 minute sports update? Bullshit. What went wrong? How many people died today?
Because we helped them. You could be singing about.
Monsieur Lapombe, vous benchez combien?
Moi, je bench pas fort. Mais moi, je tiens mon...
J'ai dit que Dan Marino s'exprimait régulièrement sur les ondes de choix Radio X et ses entrevues ne sont plus disponibles sur le site de la station depuis quelques jours. À
vrai, toi?
Oui.
Ah, ouais?
Oui. Et à cette station.
Healthy and in FlexiLine or traditional equity loan, your options are even better. Compared to the banks these days, Capital Direct's...
I need $200,000 in a duffel bag. No, I need $100,000 each in 2 duffel bags.
To be in your bank account within days. Rates are near record lows, so call Capital Direct today at 1-800-DO-CAPITAL to see what's available for you. Capital Direct.
38. With World Health Day being celebrated on April 7th, one expert says we need to raise more awareness about mental health and addiction. Here's 680's Jess Karen Cooner.
Helen Fishburne, the CEO at the Canadian Mental Health Association for Waterloo Wellington, says it has been such a time of high anxiety, depression, and sadness during the pandemic. She says because of this, people have coped in various ways.
Some people have coped well. They have been resilient. They've used networks and support systems and gone for some formal help. And other people have struggled in their coping, and they have used substances and potentially had some self-harm.
She is hoping a new advocacy campaign called Everything Is Not Okay will push the provincial government into action to support mental health and addiction services. Because as it stands right now across Waterloo Region and Guelph and Wellington, 3,520 people are waiting for care, which includes psychiatry, housing, addiction treatment, or mental health treatment. I'm Jess Karen Cooner.
Well, Britain is planning to test out so-called coronavirus status certifications over the coming weeks. ABC's Lamas Hassan says officials believe the certificates will help allow for the safe return of mass gatherings.
The British government is planning to introduce a passport scheme to allow spectators to attend sports matches, conferences, and nightclubs. The passport would indicate if a person had been vaccinated, had a recent negative test, or natural immunity. The trial lasts until mid-May.
Trial events will include soccer's FA Cup and the World Snooker Championship. Prime Minister Boris Johnson will send out more details tomorrow. Coming up in 60 seconds, we'll have traffic and we'll check your extended forecast. 680 News Time, 8:50.
You've been diagnosed with depression and can't work. You're insured?
It happens the first Sunday of every single month. It is myself, it's Miranda Malasani, and it's Sarah Blackwood. And we've just been talking about whatever we want. And it's wonderful, and it's magical, and it's fantastic. And before the break, we were talking about some stuff, some food to avoid. And Miranda, our holistic nutritionist, was helping us out because I find that now springtime, we just, I don't know, it's like, we got to get into gear. We want to be healthy. We want to look good. Summer's around the corner. We want to shed some of the pounds maybe that we've put on through the winter months. Maybe interesting over the past year for COVID. Especially with COVID, right? So you told us what to avoid. Mm-hmm. Now, what are some things that maybe that can help us?
Yeah, I think a really good focus right now because during the spring, our liver wants extra support, our digestive system. And I would say the baseline, like it's really hard in general to lose weight unless you deal with your gut health. And so it means increasing leafy greens are really important. And that will also help curb sugar cravings. Ginger, lemon, like really like your liver's favorite color is green, I always say. So anything green vegetables you can focus on is great. And digestive enzymes, I know we were talking about it earlier too, Tina. Mm-hmm. So amylase, bromelain, and lipase. So anytime your body has a hard time digesting, it's going to be slower and it's going to you're getting bloated and then it's just it's hard to feel good, right? So pineapple, the inner core of pineapple, if you eat pineapple, make sure you have a little bit of the inner core, that's bromelain, okay?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it also is a meat tenderizer too, it breaks down things. And then you can get a good digestive enzyme, we've talked about this before too, from like a good health store. And that, if you take it with a meal, you're going to help your digestion, which means you're also going to absorb more and you're going to feel better and it's going to have making better choices. I'm telling you, this is the time of year where you get on top of it.
Yeah, you told me which ones to buy, and that's chewable minty ones.
Yeah, love them.
Who makes them again? I can't remember.
Genestra. It's Soria. Yeah.
Genestra. Okay, guys, go check them out because honestly, it's fantastic. Love them.
In the west end, a high of 14 and a low of 4. For Tuesday, sunny cloud, a high of 13, and there's the chance for some evening rain showers for more communities in the GTA. And then for Wednesday, a high of 13.
That's going to happen in the same day.
And then 17 degrees for Thursday with breezy and cloudy conditions. Tonight's overnight low, 4 degrees.
And right now in downtown Toronto, we're sitting at 10 degrees under a clear sky and similar conditions at Pearson Airport and 12 degrees.
This extended forecast is brought to you by Dynamic Funds. Being active is better than being reactive. Dynamic Funds doesn't just take what the market gives. Ask a financial advisor about active management and learn more at dynamic.ca/advice.
F-150. Okay,
guys. What?
Yeah,
you're
so
big girls. Of course you drive trucks.
And I am not even 5 feet tall. That it's hilarious because one of my trainers, my kickboxing trainer, Vidu at 9 Round Vaughn, said to me when he saw me getting out, he goes, you know how? He goes, this is like the reverse of a clown car. He goes, you see all these big clowns coming out of this tiny little car. He goes, you're this tiny little person getting out of this big truck. Yeah. But I've gotta say, I am so happy that I got my wheels, and it's black on black, zero chrome. I love that. The whole thing is black, and what's with all the technology in these vehicles right now? Sarah, I know that you were saying I need a microwave in my car.
See, told you.
This is what I drive.
I told you, big girls.
Getting the answers to it. I drive.
What small girl would say, I need a microwave in my truck?
Yeah. Sometimes I leave it on the hood of my car and it gets flung off into the street, but sometimes it's in my car. And by the time you get them in the car and get them to school, your coffee is cold. So there are heaters in the cup holders that you can turn on. Put your mug in.
Sarah, there is this new mug that has a little heater in the bottom. I'm going to send you a link. I've seen it.
I have this mug warmer for my desk.
How fucking cold is it in your fucking truck?
And
I know that not all built.
He also has more than a dozen movie roles to his credit. Missy Elliott, Eminem, Viola Davis, among those lifting the artist in prayer on Twitter.
DMX, right?
There's no official word just yet on what triggered DMX's latest problems following his well-known battle against substance abuse in the past. Coming up in 60 seconds, we'll take a look at your business report with Stuart McGinn. 680 News Time, 8:50.
That you could open up the back of it and became a tent.
Oh yeah, you could camp there.
Oh yeah. Do you remember that? And then there was like a cooler in there too, like in the glove room. I don't know. I don't remember who made it.
You know why? Because when people go camping and they're not used to camping, they end up sleeping in their car. That's me.
Like, yeah, that would probably be me too. That would probably be me too. But I honestly feel like, Sarah, it's only a matter of time before we get the microwave in there, and then we get the fridge in there. It's like with technology in these vehicles, like I can't even begin to tell you all the stuff that they were showing me when I went to go pick up my F-150, and I was just looking, and I'm like, I can't even like absorb all this information that you're giving me. And oh, here's the app, and this is what the app does, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, this thing is like so smart. So I believe it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
The only thing is, I find like with these newer cars that have the 360 cameras on them and stuff, which is wonderful for backing up and moving around.
Yes.
But when you're going through a drive-through to get like a coffee or something, the car is like beep, 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 beep. Like it constantly thinks you're gonna hit stuff, right? Because you're right in that tight little driving space.
It's crazy.
Yeah, but your car has AI. Your car knows you. It knows how many times you
Mentorship
hit
from
stuff.
experienced business leaders.
That's Tiger
To learn
Woods.
more
He
about the
starts
program, I
smashing
spoke
it.
with Janelle Hines, one of the board members of what's been dubbed Futurepreneur.
We're really excited because it's about supporting young Black entrepreneurs who, for us, are 18 to 39 across Canada, and it's all about providing them with access to capital and mentorship, which are sometimes two really significant barriers for Black entrepreneurs to, start and grow their businesses.
Hines, a Black entrepreneur herself, says the mentorship part of the program is what makes it one of the first of its kind in Canada, an aspect she says has been crucial in her own career.
Teach me how to get a government contract. Can you get a government contract?
Along the way, and it's saved me from making, silly mistakes. Big one that sometimes I advise people for is understanding HST and where the $30,000 limit in Canada comes in.
That's why Hines says the mentors part of the Futurepreneur program are Canadian and most are business owners themselves.
Really able to provide that first-hand experience.
Oh shit, they're like finding the candy shop while they're also giving you advice.
Did you have a mentor? Did you have someone to provide advice? The answer is always basically yes.
Hip-hop.
Unfortunately, sometimes Black entrepreneurs don't have access to those mentors.
Along with barriers for young Black entrepreneurs in this country, there's also been the pandemic. A key time, Hines says, calls for additional support to help businesses get off their feet.
We've actually seen the increase in young people wanting to start businesses. Also, all the new opportunities are coming out of the pandemic to create, successful businesses. So that is one of the things that we're really looking at is how do we support entrepreneurs through these very tough times.
That's Janelle Hines, a board member of the new Futurepreneur Black Entrepreneur Startup Program launched this week in Canada. And at the Business Center, I'm Stuart McGinn.
Getting you where you need to go
faster.
The most traffic in Toronto. 680 News.
Comes with a lifetime warranty, so don't let rough roads get the best of you. Book your appointment today at speedyglass.ca.
Where they don't use substandard glass.
But also to smile, connect, and take the place of a
This and this. Yeah, I'm just trying hard to find something. There's nothing. Well, enough of that.
12 hours of dynamic Class 1 Bluetooth-enabled high-performance audio, or the 10.2-inch Apple iPad with 32 or 128 gigs of memory, plus a bundle of accessories at up to 30% off. Today only, save big on either or both with 12 interest-free easy pay payments, so you can enjoy them right away. Today's shopping choice.
This is your weather station, 680 News.
Taking a look at some regional weather conditions in Markham this hour, clear and 8 degrees. It's also clear in Pickering and 8 degrees. In Hamilton, clear and 10 degrees, the warmest place in the GTA right now. Followed by Kitchener with
the GTHA, the GTHA.
Downtown Toronto, we're sitting at 9 degrees with a clear sky over a Pearson Airport, similar conditions. And 10 degrees. 680 News is CFTR AM Toronto. 680 News time, 9 o'clock.
It's the GTHA because they're Hamilton. They're not in the GTA. They're in the GTHA.
Is 680 News.
Good evening. It's Sunday, April 4th. I'm Michelle Halim.
And I'm Veronica Thor. Here's what's making news right now.
Stunt driving and setting a road on fire. Wild video has emerged from Toronto police breaking up a large gathering in North York.
With the sunshine and warmer weather, there's no doubt Torontonians are struggling with the shutdown, officials thanking them for following protocol.
The Ford government has announced Dr. Homer Tien will be leading Ontario's COVID-19 vaccine distribution task force.
With the province-wide emergency brake shutdown now in effect, Waterloo MPP Catherine Fife is calling on the province for further support for small business.
About to drop the puck in Calgary, the Leafs and